Sometimes the most powerful revolutions begin in the most unexpected places. While boardrooms buzz with million-dollar decisions and executives debate market strategies, real innovation often sparks in forgotten corners where humble hands work quietly, unnoticed by those who think they know everything about success. What happens when the person everyone overlooks possesses the one thing that could transform an entire industry? What happens when dismissal becomes the catalyst for a breakthrough that shakes the very foundation of corporate arrogance? This isn't just another underdog story. This is the true account of how a single moment of corporate cruelty unleashed a force that would rewrite the rules of an entire industry, proving that genius doesn't always wear a suit, and that the next game-changing innovation might be sitting right under your nose, dismissed by those too blind to see its potential. Get ready to witness how one man's quiet dignity in the face of humiliation became the spark that ignited a technological revolution worth billions, forever changing how we think about innovation, respect, and the untapped potential that exists in every corner of our world. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine parking lot of Meridian Automotive Technologies as Marcus Chun pushed his cleaning cart toward the executive wing. His weathered hands gripped the handle steady, the same way they had every morning for the past 8 years. At 62, Marcus moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who had perfected the art of being invisible in a world that barely acknowledged his existence. His 1967 Ford Mustang sat in the employee parking section, a splash of faded blue paint among the sea of luxury vehicles that filled the executive spaces. The car had been his father's, passed down through 3 generations of the Chun family. Every dent told a story, every scratch held a memory, but to anyone walking past, it looked like exactly what CEO Jonathan Blackwood would later call it, that fateful Tuesday morning. Marcus had always been more than just a janitor, though few people bothered to look beneath the surface. During his lunch breaks, while other employees scrolled through social media or chatted about weekend plans, Marcus could be found in the company library, poring over technical manuals and engineering journals. His small apartment was cluttered with automotive magazines, mechanical drawings, and half-finished prototypes that he tinkered with in his spare time. The contradiction wasn't lost on him. By day, he emptied trash cans and mopped floors in a building where some of the world's most advanced automotive technologies were developed. By night, he worked on innovations that he believed could revolutionize the very industry that saw him as nothing more than background noise. He had submitted dozens of ideas through the company's innovation portal over the years, each one disappearing into the digital void without so much as an acknowledgement. Meridian Automotive Technologies stood as a monument to corporate success, its glass towers reaching toward the sky like metallic fingers grasping for profits. Founded by Jonathan Blackwood's grandfather in the 1940s, the company had grown from a small parts manufacturer into one of the largest automotive technology firms in the world. Their engines powered vehicles across 6 continents, and their research division held patents that shaped the industry's direction for decades. Jonathan Blackwood had inherited more than just a company when his father passed 5 years earlier. He had inherited an empire, a legacy, and an ego that seemed to grow larger with each quarterly earnings report. At 45, he embodied everything that old money and new success could produce. Perfectly tailored suits, a Harvard MBA displayed prominently in his corner office, and a fleet of luxury vehicles that he rotated through like a fashion statement. The irony was that Jonathan knew very little about the actual engineering that made his company successful. He understood markets, profit margins, and shareholder value, but the intricate dance of pistons, cylinders, and combustion chambers that formed the heart of his business empire remained a mystery to him. He left the technical details to his team of engineers, while he focused on what he considered the more important aspects of running a billion-dollar corporation. That Tuesday morning started like any other for Marcus. He arrived at 5:30, an hour before the official start of his shift, using the extra time to review technical specifications for a new engine design he had been developing in his mind for months. The concept centered around a revolutionary combustion process that could potentially increase fuel efficiency by 40% while reducing emissions to nearly zero. He had been sketching diagrams and running calculations for weeks, but like all his previous innovations, he had nowhere to present it that would be taken seriously. The executive parking lot was still empty when Marcus began his rounds, the silence broken only by the distant hum of early morning traffic. He worked methodically through the first 3 floors, cleaning offices, restocking supplies, and emptying waste baskets filled with discarded reports that probably contained more valuable information than most people realized. Marcus had developed the habit of glancing at the documents as he disposed of them, not out of nosiness, but out of genuine curiosity about the projects that shaped his workplace. It was during these quiet morning hours that Marcus felt most connected to the company's mission. Surrounded by the tools of innovation, walking through laboratories where the future of transportation was being written, he allowed himself to imagine a world where his ideas might someday matter. The engine design that consumed his thoughts represented more than just technical innovation to him. It represented hope that his decades of quiet observation and self-directed learning might eventually contribute to something meaningful. By 7:30, the building began to fill with employees arriving for another day of corporate productivity. Marcus continued his work, moving through the halls with the practiced invisibility that came naturally after years of being overlooked. Engineers discussed complex projects in hallways. Marketing teams debated campaign strategies in conference rooms, and executives made decisions that would affect thousands of jobs and millions of customers. None of them noticed the janitor who listened carefully to their conversations, who understood more about their technical challenges than they might have imagined, and who had been quietly developing solutions to problems they didn't even know existed. Marcus had become an accidental expert on the company's operations, absorbing information through proximity and processing it through the lens of his own mechanical intuition. The morning proceeded normally until Jonathan Blackwood arrived for an early meeting with potential investors from Germany. The delegation was considering a partnership that could expand Meridian's reach into European markets, and Jonathan had spent weeks preparing for their visit. Everything needed to be perfect, from the presentation materials to the corporate image that would influence their decision to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in joint ventures. Marcus was finishing his cleaning routine on the executive floor when he heard voices approaching from the main conference room. Jonathan's distinctive laugh echoed through the hallway, followed by the measured tones of the German delegation discussing technical specifications and market projections. Marcus gathered his supplies and prepared to move to a different area, following his standard practice of avoiding any situation where his presence might be deemed inappropriate. As he headed toward the service elevator, Marcus passed the large windows that overlooked the employee parking lot. The morning sun illuminated his Mustang, highlighting the faded paint and the small dent on the rear fender that he had never bothered to repair. The car represented more than transportation to him. It was a connection to his family's history, a reminder of his father's mechanical wisdom, and a symbol of the American automotive innovation that had shaped his own passion for engineering. What Marcus didn't realize was that Jonathan Blackwood and his guests had also noticed the view from those same windows. As they concluded their meeting and moved toward the elevators for a tour of the facility, one of the German investors made a casual comment about the parking lot, noting the mix of vehicles as an indicator of the company's employee demographics. Jonathan seized on the opportunity to demonstrate his attention to detail and his commitment to maintaining corporate standards. He gestured toward the parking lot with the confidence of someone who believed his opinions carried weight simply because of his position. The words that followed would set in motion a chain of events that neither he nor Marcus could have anticipated. The casual dismissal of Marcus's Mustang as worthless was intended as nothing more than corporate theater, a way to reassure important visitors that Meridian maintained the kind of professional standards they expected from a potential business partner. Jonathan's comment was delivered with the thoughtless cruelty that often accompanies unexamined privilege, the assumption that his judgment about things he didn't understand was automatically valid because of his status. Marcus overheard the comment as he waited for the elevator, the words cutting through the ambient noise of the busy hallway like a blade through silk. For a moment, he stood perfectly still, processing not just the insult, but the casual way it had been delivered, as if the car and its owner were so insignificant that disparaging them required no consideration of consequences. The elevator arrived with a soft chime, its doors opening to reveal the mechanical precision that Marcus had always found comforting. As he stepped inside and pressed the button for the basement level, he made a decision that would change everything. The quiet dignity that had sustained him through years of invisible service transformed into something more focused, more determined. For 8 years, Marcus had accepted his position in the corporate hierarchy, content to pursue his passion for engineering as a private hobby while earning an honest living through honest work. But Jonathan's dismissal had awakened something different, a recognition that perhaps it was time to stop being invisible, time to step forward with the innovation that had been growing in his mind for months. The basement of Meridian Automotive Technologies housed the maintenance facilities, storage rooms, and a small workshop that Marcus had been given permission to use for building repairs and equipment maintenance. Over the years, he had quietly transformed one corner of this space into a private laboratory, equipped with tools he had purchased himself and materials he had gathered from discarded prototypes and outdated equipment. That afternoon, instead of heading home to his small apartment, Marcus remained in his basement workshop. He spread out the papers containing his engine design sketches, turned on the overhead lights, and began the process of transforming theoretical innovation into practical reality. The insult that had stung him that morning now served as fuel for something much more powerful than hurt feelings. Marcus understood that building a revolutionary engine in a basement workshop would require more than just technical knowledge. It would require creativity, persistence, and the kind of mechanical intuition that couldn't be taught in engineering schools. But it would also require something else: the courage to believe that his ideas deserved to be taken seriously, regardless of his position in the corporate hierarchy. As the sun set over the Meridian building, casting long shadows across the executive parking lot where his Mustang still sat, Marcus began the work that would eventually prove that innovation doesn't recognize corporate titles, that genius can emerge from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the most powerful revolutions begin with a single moment of underestimated determination. The worthless car that had been dismissed with such casual cruelty would become the testing ground for an engine design worth billions. But that transformation was still months away, waiting to unfold through countless hours of precise work, careful calculation, and the quiet persistence of a man who had finally decided to stop being invisible. The weeks following Jonathan Blackwood's dismissive comment transformed Marcus Chin's routine in ways that no one at Meridian Automotive Technologies could have noticed. His cleaning duties remained as meticulous as ever, his quiet demeanor unchanged, but beneath the surface, a revolution was taking shape in the forgotten corners of the corporate empire that had overlooked his potential for so long. Marcus's basement workshop became his second home, a sanctuary where theoretical possibilities could be tested against mechanical reality. The space itself was unremarkable: concrete floors, fluorescent lighting, and metal shelving lined with tools that Marcus had collected over decades of fixing, building, and imagining. But within these humble walls, he began constructing what would become the most significant automotive innovation of the 21st century. The engine design that had existed only in his mind and on scattered pieces of paper was called the Meridian Hybrid Combustion System, though Marcus simply referred to it as the solution. The concept addressed the two greatest challenges facing modern automotive engineering: fuel efficiency and environmental impact. Traditional internal combustion engines operated on principles that had remained largely unchanged for over a century, burning fossil fuels in a process that wasted enormous amounts of energy as heat and produced emissions that damaged the environment. Marcus's innovation centered on a revolutionary combustion chamber design that used a secondary injection system to create a more complete burn of the fuel mixture. By introducing a precisely timed sequence of micro-injections during the combustion cycle, His engine could extract nearly twice as much energy from the same amount of fuel, while producing emissions so clean that the exhaust was actually cleaner than the air in most major cities. The technical brilliance of the design lay in its simplicity. While other engineers focused on complex computer systems and exotic materials, Marcus had identified a fundamental inefficiency in the combustion process itself and engineered a mechanical solution that could be manufactured using existing production techniques. His engine didn't require rare earth elements, expensive sensors, or sophisticated software. It worked through precise mechanical timing and innovative chamber geometry that any experienced manufacturer could produce. Every evening after finishing his cleaning duties, Marcus descended into his workshop and continued the painstaking process of building his prototype. He fabricated components using a lathe he had rebuilt from salvaged parts, machined precision elements with tools he had designed himself, and assembled the engine with the kind of attention to detail that came from understanding every aspect of its operation. The work was exhausting, often extending until the early morning hours before he needed to return upstairs for another day of invisible service. Marcus sustained himself through these marathon sessions with coffee from a thermos and the quiet satisfaction of watching his theoretical design take physical form. Each component he completed brought him closer to proving that his years of observation, study, and mechanical intuition had produced something genuinely revolutionary. During his lunch breaks, Marcus began conducting research that went far beyond his usual reading of technical journals. He investigated patent databases, studied market analyses, and researched the regulatory requirements for new engine technologies. What he discovered both encouraged and concerned him. Nothing like his design existed in the current market, but the process of bringing new automotive technologies to market was enormously complex and expensive. The automotive industry operated under strict regulatory oversight, requiring extensive testing, documentation, and approval processes before any new engine design could be installed in production vehicles. Independent inventors faced additional challenges, as most manufacturers preferred to develop new technologies internally or license designs from established engineering firms rather than work with individual innovators. Marcus realized that building a functional prototype was only the first step in a much longer journey. To prove the value of his innovation, he would need to demonstrate not just that his engine worked, but that it worked better than existing alternatives under real-world conditions. This meant extensive testing, performance validation, and data collection that could withstand scrutiny from engineers, regulators, and potential investors. The breakthrough moment came on a cold Thursday evening in November, 3 months after beginning his basement project. Marcus had been struggling with the precise timing mechanism that controlled the secondary injection system, trying to achieve the split-second accuracy needed for optimal combustion efficiency. Traditional mechanical timing systems weren't precise enough for his design, but electronic controls seemed too complex for the elegant simplicity he was trying to achieve. The solution came to him while he was cleaning the executive conference room, where Jonathan Blackwood held his weekly strategy meetings. As Marcus emptied the wastebasket, he noticed a discarded report about micro-timing mechanisms used in precision manufacturing. The document described mechanical systems that could achieve timing accuracy measured in fractions of milliseconds using nothing more sophisticated than specially designed cam profiles and spring-loaded actuators. That night, Marcus redesigned his timing mechanism using principles adapted from the manufacturing report. The new system used a series of precisely machined cams that rotated in harmony with the engine's main crankshaft, triggering the secondary injections at exactly the right moment in each combustion cycle. The mechanical elegance of the solution perfectly matched his vision for an engine that was both revolutionary and practical. With the timing system solved, Marcus's prototype began to take its final form. The engine was smaller than conventional designs, its compact configuration made possible by the more efficient combustion process that generated more power from less displacement. The secondary injection system was integrated seamlessly into the cylinder head design, invisible to casual observation, but critical to the engine's revolutionary performance characteristics. Marcus tested individual components as he completed them, verifying that each element performed within the precise specifications his design required. The injection timing accuracy, combustion chamber pressure characteristics, and exhaust emission levels all met or exceeded his theoretical calculations. But the true test would come only when all the components worked together as a complete system. By February, 6 months after beginning the project, Marcus had completed his prototype engine. The final assembly occupied a corner of his workshop, connected to a testing apparatus he had constructed from salvaged equipment and precision instruments he had purchased with his modest savings. The engine looked almost ordinary, its innovative elements hidden within conventional external components that could have come from any modern automotive manufacturer. Marcus's testing protocol was exhaustive and methodical. He measured performance across dozens of operating conditions, recording data on fuel consumption, power output, emission levels, operating temperature, and mechanical efficiency. Each test session lasted several hours, with Marcus carefully monitoring every aspect of the engine's operation while making detailed notes about its behavior under different loads and operating speeds. The results exceeded even his optimistic projections. The Meridian hybrid combustion system achieved 42% better fuel efficiency than the best conventional engines currently in production, while generating emission levels so low that they were barely detectable by standard testing equipment. The power output was comparable to engines with 50% more displacement, and the mechanical operation was smoother and quieter than anything Marcus had experienced in 30 years of working with automotive machinery. But perhaps most importantly, the engine demonstrated the kind of reliability and consistency that would be essential for commercial viability. After hundreds of hours of testing under conditions ranging from idle to full power output, Marcus's prototype showed no signs of wear, performance degradation, or mechanical stress. The innovative combustion process actually generated less heat than conventional designs, reducing the thermal stress that limited the lifespan of traditional engines. Marcus documented every aspect of his testing in detailed reports that followed the same format used by professional engineering firms. He created performance charts, technical specifications, and operational analyses that demonstrated not just that his engine worked, but exactly how it worked and why it represented such a significant advancement over existing technology. Throughout this period of intensive development and testing, Marcus continued his regular duties at Meridian Automotive Technologies without any outward indication of the revolutionary work he was conducting in his spare time. He cleaned offices where engineers discussed fuel efficiency challenges, emptied wastebaskets filled with reports about emission reduction strategies, and listened to conversations about the industry's desperate need for breakthrough technologies. The irony wasn't lost on him that the solution to problems worth billions of dollars to his employer was being developed just a few floors below their feet by the janitor they barely acknowledged. But Marcus had learned patience through years of invisible service, and he understood that timing would be crucial to how his innovation was received and valued. As winter turned to spring, Marcus began preparing for the next phase of his plan. The prototype engine had proven the theoretical validity of his design, but to truly demonstrate its revolutionary potential, he needed to install it in an actual vehicle and test its performance under real-world driving conditions. The vehicle he had in mind was the same 1967 Ford Mustang that Jonathan Blackwood had dismissed as worthless nearly a year earlier. The conversion process would require extensive modifications to the Mustang's engine bay, cooling system, and electronic components. But Marcus had already designed the necessary adaptations, drawing on his intimate knowledge of the car's mechanical systems and his growing expertise in advanced engine technology. The project would transform his father's legacy into a testament to innovation, proving that true value couldn't be measured by superficial appearances or corporate prejudices. Marcus had also begun researching the patent process, studying how other inventors had protected their innovations and brought them to market. He learned about provisional patents, which would give him 1 year of protection while he gathered the resources needed to file comprehensive patent applications. The process was expensive and complex, but Marcus had been saving money for months, setting aside every dollar he could spare for the legal fees and documentation requirements. More challenging than the technical and legal aspects of his project was the question of how to reveal his innovation to the world in a way that would ensure it received serious consideration. Marcus understood that his position as a janitor would make it difficult for industry professionals to take his work seriously, regardless of its technical merit. He would need to find a way to demonstrate the engine's capabilities so convincingly that his background became irrelevant compared to the results he could deliver. The answer to this challenge was beginning to take shape in Marcus's mind, a plan that would use Jonathan Blackwood's own arrogance against him while providing undeniable proof of the engine's revolutionary potential. But executing this plan would require perfect timing, careful preparation, and the courage to step forward from the shadows where he had remained invisible for so many years. As spring arrived at Meridian Automotive Technologies, Marcus Chun continued his quiet work with renewed purpose. The dismissive comment that had wounded him months earlier had become the catalyst for something much larger than personal vindication. He was on the verge of proving that innovation could emerge from anywhere, that genius didn't require corporate titles or university credentials, and that the next technological revolution might be sitting right under the nose of those too arrogant to look beyond their own assumptions about who deserved to be heard. The transformation of Marcus Chen's 1967 Ford Mustang from a dismissed relic into a technological marvel began on a warm Saturday morning in May. Marcus had spent weeks preparing for this moment, carefully planning every aspect of the engine installation to ensure that his innovative design would integrate seamlessly with the classic American muscle car that had become an unexpected symbol of his quiet revolution. The Mustang sat in the small garage behind Marcus's apartment building, its hood raised like a patient waiting for surgery. 40 years of faithful service had left their marks on the vehicle, paint faded by countless summers, chrome dulled by winter salt, and an interior worn smooth by thousands of miles of family memories. But beneath its weathered exterior, the car's fundamental structure remained solid, a testament to the engineering excellence that had made it an American icon. Marcus had chosen the Mustang for more than sentimental reasons. The car's spacious engine bay, robust chassis, and simple electronic systems made it an ideal platform for testing his revolutionary engine design under real-world conditions. More importantly, the contrast between the car's ordinary appearance and its soon-to-be extraordinary performance would serve as larger purpose when the time came to reveal his innovation to the world. The installation process required extensive modifications to accommodate the unique requirements of Marcus's hybrid combustion system. The engine's compact design actually made it smaller than the original V8, but the secondary injection system needed additional fuel lines, and the advanced timing mechanism required custom mounting brackets that Marcus had fabricated in his basement workshop. Working alone in the garage, Marcus approached each step of the installation with a methodical precision that had characterized his entire career. Every bolt was torqued to exact specifications, every connection tested multiple times, and every component positioned with the kind of attention to detail that came from understanding that a single mistake could invalidate months of careful development. The fuel system modifications were particularly complex, requiring Marcus to install dual fuel pumps, additional filtration systems, and the specialized injection nozzles that enabled his revolutionary combustion process. Traditional fuel injection systems delivered gasoline to the engine in a single burst at the beginning of each combustion cycle, but Marcus's design required precisely timed secondary injections that occurred during the combustion process itself. This timing precision demanded a level of mechanical accuracy that pushed the limits of what could be achieved with conventional automotive components. Marcus had spent weeks testing different configurations in his basement workshop, finally settling on a system that used mechanical linkages synchronized with the engine's crankshaft to trigger the secondary injections at exactly the right moment in each cylinder's combustion cycle. The cooling system also required significant modifications to accommodate the different thermal characteristics of Marcus's engine design. The hybrid combustion system generated less waste heat than conventional engines, but it distributed that heat differently throughout the engine block. Marcus designed a custom cooling circuit that maintained optimal operating temperatures while reducing the overall cooling requirements by nearly 30%. As the installation progressed over several weekends, Marcus began to appreciate the elegant way his modern innovation complemented the Mustang's classic engineering. The car's simple, robust design provided an ideal foundation for advanced technology, while the engine's efficiency improvements would enhance rather than compromise the vehicle's legendary performance characteristics. The electrical integration proved to be one of the more challenging aspects of the project. While Marcus's engine was designed to operate largely through mechanical systems, it still required electrical connections for ignition timing, fuel pump control, and the sensors that monitored combustion efficiency. The Mustang's original electrical system was adequate for these requirements, but Marcus added modern components that provided more precise control and better reliability. Marcus also installed a comprehensive data acquisition system that could monitor every aspect of the engine's performance during testing. Hidden beneath the dashboard, this equipment continuously recorded information about fuel consumption, emission levels, power output, and operating temperatures. The data would provide the objective evidence needed to validate his engine's revolutionary capabilities. By early June, the installation was complete, and Marcus faced the moment he had been anticipating for months: the first startup of his revolutionary engine in an actual vehicle. The prototype had run successfully in his basement workshop, but integrating it into a complete automotive system presented new challenges and unknowns that could only be resolved through testing. Marcus turned the ignition key on a humid Tuesday evening, holding his breath as the starter motor engaged and the engine turned over for the first time. The initial few seconds seemed to stretch forever as fuel pumps primed, timing mechanisms synchronized, and the complex dance of mechanical precision began. Then, with a smooth rumble that was noticeably quieter than the original engine had ever been, Marcus's hybrid combustion system came to life. The engine's idle was remarkably stable, with none of the rough vibration or irregular rhythm that characterized most high-performance engines. The secondary injection system operated so smoothly that its complex timing was virtually inaudible, creating an overall sound profile that suggested power held in perfect control rather than barely contained energy. Marcus's initial testing was conducted in the garage, allowing the engine to warm up while he monitored the data acquisition system for any signs of problems or unexpected behavior. Every sensor reading fell within the expected parameters, confirming that the theoretical calculations from his basement workshop translated accurately to real-world operation. The first road test occurred on empty highways outside the city, where Marcus could evaluate the engine's performance across a full range of driving conditions without the complications of traffic or urban driving patterns. The Mustang accelerated with authority that seemed impossible given the engine's compact size, reaching 60 miles per hour in less than 6 seconds while consuming fuel at a rate that Marcus had to verify multiple times because the readings seemed too good to be true. But acceleration was only part of the story. The engine's efficiency characteristics became most apparent during highway cruising, where conventional engines worked hardest to maintain consistent speeds against wind resistance and rolling friction. Marcus's design thrived under these conditions, achieving fuel economy that exceeded the best hybrid vehicles currently available while maintaining the smooth power delivery that made the Mustang such a pleasure to drive. The emission testing results were even more remarkable than the fuel efficiency data. Using portable testing equipment that Marcus had borrowed from a former colleague, an environmental consulting firm, he measured exhaust emissions that were so low they barely registered on instruments calibrated for conventional vehicles. The secondary combustion process in his engine burned fuel so completely that the exhaust contained fewer pollutants than the ambient air in most urban environments. Marcus conducted these tests with scientific rigor, recording data under dozens of different operating conditions and driving scenarios: city driving, highway cruising, stop-and-go traffic, hill climbing, and high-speed acceleration all produced consistent results that validated his engine's superior performance across the complete spectrum of real-world automotive use. The mechanical reliability of the engine was equally impressive. After hundreds of miles of testing, Marcus detected no signs of unusual wear, temperature stress, or performance degradation. The innovative combustion process actually reduced the thermal and mechanical stresses that limited the lifespan of conventional engines, suggesting that his design would not only perform better, but last longer than existing technology. Perhaps most importantly, the engine demonstrated the kind of consistent, predictable behavior that would be essential for commercial viability. Unlike experimental technologies that worked well under laboratory conditions, but failed in real-world applications, Marcus's hybrid combustion system performed exactly as his theoretical models predicted across every testing scenario. During this intensive testing period, Marcus continued his regular duties at Meridian Automotive Technologies, though his perspective on the corporate environment had changed dramatically. Walking through offices where engineers struggled with fuel efficiency challenges that he had already solved, attending executive meetings where Jonathan Blackwood discussed market pressures for cleaner technologies that Marcus had already developed, he felt like a time traveler who had seen the future, but couldn't yet reveal what he knew. The irony of his situation became particularly acute during company meetings about environmental regulations and fuel efficiency standards that were forcing the automotive industry to invest billions of dollars in research and development. Marcus listened to presentations about breakthrough technologies that were still years away from practical application, knowing that he had already achieved better results working alone in his basement workshop. But Marcus had learned patience through years of invisible service, and he understood that the timing of his revelation would be crucial to its impact. The automotive industry was notoriously conservative, resistant to innovations from outside established channels, and skeptical of claims that seemed too good to be true. To overcome these barriers, Marcus needed to demonstrate his engine's capabilities so convincingly that its source became irrelevant compared to its performance. The plan that had been forming in Marcus's mind for months was beginning to crystallize into specific actions. He would use the same corporate arrogance that had dismissed his car as worthless to create a platform for demonstrating its transformation into something revolutionary. But executing this plan would require perfect timing, careful orchestration, and the kind of dramatic revelation that would force the entire industry to acknowledge what they had overlooked. As summer progressed, Marcus completed the final phases of his testing program, documenting performance data that exceeded his most optimistic projections and gathering the evidence needed to support patent applications for his revolutionary engine design. The Mustang had become more than just a test vehicle. It was proof that innovation could emerge from unexpected sources and that true value couldn't be measured by superficial appearances. Marcus also began preparing for the legal and business aspects of bringing his innovation to market. He filed provisional patents for the key elements of his design, initiated discussions with environmental testing laboratories about formal certification of his emission levels, and researched the regulatory requirements for new automotive technologies. But the most important preparation was psychological. For years, Marcus had accepted his invisible status in the corporate hierarchy, content to pursue his passion for engineering as a private hobby while others made the decisions that shaped the industry. Now, he was preparing to step forward with an innovation that would force the entire automotive world to acknowledge his expertise and respect his contributions. The transformation was already complete in his garage, where a dismissed car had become the platform for revolutionary technology worth billions of dollars. Soon, that transformation would become visible to the world, proving that genius could emerge from the most unexpected places and that sometimes the most powerful innovations were developed by those whom others had chosen to overlook. Marcus Chun was no longer just a janitor with a hobby. He was an inventor with a revolution, preparing to challenge an industry's assumptions about who deserved to be heard and what kinds of innovations were possible when dedication and intelligence were given the opportunity to flourish without the constraints of corporate prejudice. The annual Meridian Automotive Technologies Innovation Showcase had become one of the industry's most prestigious events, attracting executives, engineers, and investors from around the world to witness the latest breakthroughs in automotive technology. For Jonathan Blackwood, it represented the pinnacle of corporate theater, an opportunity to demonstrate his company's technological leadership while networking with the industry's most influential figures. The 2024 showcase was particularly important for Meridian as the company faced increasing pressure to develop more efficient, environmentally friendly technologies in response to new regulatory requirements and changing consumer preferences. Jonathan had spent months preparing presentations about breakthrough innovations that were still years away from practical application, promising investors and regulators that Meridian was on the verge of revolutionary advances. Marcus Chun watched the preparations for the showcase with growing anticipation, knowing that this event would provide the perfect platform for revealing his own revolutionary innovation. For months, he had been planning his approach, waiting for the right moment to demonstrate that the breakthrough Jonathan was promising already existed, developed not in Meridian's expensive research laboratories, but in the basement workshop of the janitor whose car had been dismissed as worthless. The showcase was scheduled for the second Thursday in September, with demonstrations planned for Meridian's private test track adjacent to the corporate headquarters. The facility featured a professional-grade circuit where prototype vehicles could demonstrate their capabilities under controlled conditions, allowing potential investors and partners to witness new technologies in action rather than simply reading about them in technical reports. Marcus had submitted a registration for the showcase's Open Innovation segment, a portion of the event reserved for external inventors and smaller companies to present their technologies to Meridian's engineering team. This section typically featured incremental improvements and minor innovations that rarely attracted serious attention from the main event's high-profile attendees, making it the perfect cover for Marcus's much more significant revelation. The registration process had required extensive documentation about the technology being presented, but Marcus had carefully crafted his submission to describe his engine in general terms that didn't reveal its true revolutionary potential. He listed himself as an independent automotive engineer, technically accurate given his years of self-directed study and innovation, while omitting his day job as Meridian's janitor. As the showcase date approached, Marcus made final preparations for what would be the most important day of his career. He had arranged for professional emissions testing at an independent laboratory, generating certified documentation of his engine's unprecedented performance characteristics. He had also completed the formal patent applications for his hybrid combustion system, establishing legal protection for his innovations before revealing them publicly. Most importantly, Marcus had thoroughly tested every aspect of his modified Mustang's performance, ensuring that the vehicle would demonstrate his engine's capabilities flawlessly under the scrutiny of professional automotive engineers. The car had accumulated thousands of test miles over the summer, consistently delivering the exceptional fuel efficiency and emission levels that made his technology so revolutionary. The morning of the showcase arrived with clear skies and moderate temperatures, ideal conditions for outdoor demonstrations and vehicle testing. Marcus arrived at the Meridian facility early, driving his Mustang through the employee entrance and parking in the designated area for showcase participants. The car drew curious glances from other inventors and engineers, its ordinary appearance contrasting sharply with the sleek prototypes and concept vehicles that filled the demonstration area. Jonathan Blackwood began the day with a keynote presentation to an audience of nearly 300 industry professionals, investors, and media representatives. Speaking from the main auditorium of Meridian's corporate headquarters, he painted a picture of an automotive future transformed by breakthrough technologies that would revolutionize fuel efficiency and environmental impact. The innovations we are developing at Meridian will fundamentally change how the world thinks about automotive power, Jonathan declared, his voice carrying the confidence of someone accustomed to being believed without question. Within the next 5 years, we expect to introduce engine technologies that will achieve fuel efficiency improvements of up to 30% while meeting the strictest environmental standards ever imposed on our industry. Marcus listened to this presentation from the back of the auditorium, knowing that his engine had already exceeded Jonathan's promises by more than 40% while producing emission levels that surpassed the strictest standards by factors that most engineers would consider impossible. The irony of hearing Jonathan describe as revolutionary breakthroughs the very technologies that Marcus had already perfected added urgency to his determination to reveal the truth. The morning presentations continued with technical sessions led by Meridian's engineering teams, discussing research projects and development timelines that would bring theoretical advances to practical application over the next decade. Marcus attended several of these sessions, listening to complex discussions about challenges that his engine design had already solved through elegant mechanical innovations rather than expensive technological complexity. During the lunch break, Marcus prepared his Mustang for the afternoon demonstration sessions. He connected the portable data acquisition equipment that would provide real-time monitoring of the engine's performance, verified that all systems were operating within optimal parameters, and reviewed his presentation materials one final time. Everything needed to be perfect for the revelation that would transform his life and challenge the automotive industry's assumptions about innovation. The open innovation segment began at 2 o'clock, with participants given 20 minutes each to demonstrate their technologies and present their findings to a panel of Meridian engineers and potential investors. Marcus was scheduled as the final presenter of the day, a timing that he had specifically requested to ensure maximum attendance for his demonstration. As the afternoon progressed, Marcus observed the other presentations with professional interest while mentally rehearsing his own approach. The innovations being demonstrated were competent but incremental, slight improvements to existing technologies, marginal efficiency gains, and evolutionary rather than revolutionary advances. None of the presenters were proposing anything that would fundamentally challenge the industry's existing paradigms. Jonathan Blackwood arrived at the demonstration area during the next-to-last presentation, accompanied by several members of Meridian's executive team and the German investors whose partnership discussions had led to his original dismissive comment about Marcus's car. His presence added an element of corporate gravitas to the proceedings while creating exactly the audience that Marcus had hoped would witness his revelation. When Marcus's turn arrived, he approached the demonstration area with the quiet confidence that came from months of preparation and absolute certainty about his engine's capabilities. The Mustang sat in the center of the test area, its unassuming appearance drawing skeptical glances from the assembled engineers and executives who were accustomed to evaluating technologies based on their presentation value as much as their actual performance. Marcus began his presentation by describing the theoretical foundations of his hybrid combustion system, explaining the inefficiencies in conventional engine design that his innovation addressed through mechanical rather than electronic solutions. The technical details were complex enough to demonstrate his expertise while remaining accessible to the mixed audience of engineers, executives, and investors. Traditional internal combustion engines waste approximately 60% of their fuel energy as heat, Marcus explained, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. My design recovers this waste energy through a secondary combustion process that burns fuel more completely while reducing emissions to levels that exceed current environmental standards by significant margins. The audience listened politely, but Marcus could sense their skepticism. Claims about revolutionary fuel efficiency were common in the automotive industry, usually accompanied by complex explanations about why practical implementation remained years away. What made Marcus's presentation different was his transition from theoretical discussion to actual demonstration. Rather than simply describe these theoretical advantages, I'd like to demonstrate them using this 1967 Ford Mustang, which has been converted to use my hybrid combustion system, Marcus announced, gesturing toward his car. The audience's attention sharpened as they realized they were about to witness an actual test rather than just another PowerPoint presentation. Marcus started the Mustang's engine, the smooth, quiet idle immediately capturing the attention of automotive professionals who were trained to evaluate engine performance by sound. The engine's whisper-quiet operation contrasted dramatically with the aggressive rumble typically associated with American muscle cars, suggesting either extensive sound dampening or fundamentally different combustion characteristics. The real-time data display showed fuel consumption and emission levels that drew audible gasps from several engineers in the audience. The numbers seemed impossible. Fuel efficiency that exceeded the best hybrid vehicles while producing emission levels that were barely detectable. Several observers moved closer to verify that the monitoring equipment was actually connected to the vehicle and functioning properly. Marcus then invited the panel to conduct their own verification of his engine's performance, providing independent testing equipment and offering to subject the vehicle to any evaluation procedures they consider appropriate. This transparency was crucial to establishing credibility, as extraordinary claims in the automotive industry were typically supported by careful control of testing conditions and limited access to verification. For the next hour, Marcus's Mustang underwent the most thorough technical evaluation any vehicle had ever received at a Meridian showcase. Professional engineers tested acceleration, measured fuel consumption under various load conditions, and used sophisticated equipment to analyze exhaust emissions. Every test confirmed the extraordinary performance characteristics that Marcus had claimed for his revolutionary engine design. Jonathan Blackwood observed these proceedings with growing amazement and concern. The janitor whose car he had dismissed as worthless was demonstrating technology that exceeded Meridian's most optimistic research projections by margins that seemed scientifically impossible. The vehicle he had ridiculed was performing at levels that would revolutionize the entire automotive industry if the results could be replicated in production vehicles. As the testing continued and the results became undeniable, the atmosphere in the demonstration area shifted from skepticism to excitement. Conversations erupted among the observers as engineers began discussing the implications of Marcus's technology for their own research projects and development timelines. Investors asked detailed questions about patent status, production feasibility, and market applications. The German delegation that had been present for Jonathan's original dismissive comment about the Mustang was particularly interested in the commercial potential of Marcus's innovation. They understood that environmental regulations in European markets were becoming increasingly stringent, creating enormous demand for exactly the kind of breakthrough technology that Marcus had developed. Marcus answered technical questions with the expertise of someone who understood every aspect of his innovation's operation, from the theoretical principles that enabled its superior performance to the practical manufacturing considerations that would affect its commercial viability. His responses demonstrated not just engineering competence, but the kind of comprehensive knowledge that could only come from hands-on development experience. The revelation that Marcus was employed as a janitor at Meridian came during the question and answer session when one of the German investors asked about his background and previous experience in automotive engineering. Marcus's honest response created a moment of stunned silence as the audience processed the implications of what they had just witnessed. The industry's most significant technological breakthrough in decades had been developed not by a team of research scientists in an expensive corporate laboratory, but by a single individual working in his spare time with tools he had purchased himself and materials he had salvaged from discarded equipment. The contrast between the innovation's revolutionary potential and its humble origins challenged every assumption about how breakthrough technologies were supposed to be developed. Jonathan Blackwood's reaction was visible to everyone present, his face cycling through expressions of disbelief, embarrassment, and calculation as he realized the magnitude of his earlier mistake. The janitor he had dismissed had developed technology worth potentially billions of dollars while working literally beneath his feet, innovations that could transform Meridian's competitive position if properly managed. As word of Marcus's demonstration spread throughout the showcase, crowds of engineers and executives gathered around the Mustang, eager to examine the vehicle that had redefined what was possible in automotive engineering. Technical discussions continued late into the evening as industry professionals tried to understand how such revolutionary advances had emerged from such an unexpected source. Marcus handled the attention with the same quiet dignity that had sustained him through years of invisible service, answering questions thoughtfully while maintaining focus on the technical merits of his innovation rather than the dramatic circumstances of its revelation. He had succeeded in forcing the automotive industry to acknowledge his expertise, but he understood that this recognition was only the beginning of a much longer process of bringing his technology to market. The worthless car that had been dismissed with casual cruelty had become the platform for proving that innovation could emerge from anywhere, that genius didn't require corporate validation, and that sometimes the most powerful revolutions began with underestimated individuals who refused to accept that their ideas didn't matter. The weeks following Marcus Chen's revolutionary demonstration at the Meridian Innovation Showcase transformed not only his personal circumstances, but the entire trajectory of the automotive industry's approach to technological advancement. What had begun as a moment of personal vindication evolved into a catalyst for changes that would reshape how innovation was valued, developed, and brought to market across the global transportation sector. Within 48 hours of his presentation, Marcus found himself at the center of a bidding war among automotive manufacturers, technology companies, and investment firms that recognized the revolutionary potential of his hybrid combustion system. The same industry that had overlooked him for years suddenly viewed him as the key to solving their most pressing challenges in fuel efficiency and environmental compliance. The transformation was particularly stark at Meridian Automotive Technologies, where Jonathan Blackwood faced the professional embarrassment of having dismissed as worthless the very innovation that could secure his company's competitive future. The German investors who had witnessed both his original insult and Marcus's ultimate vindication made it clear that their partnership discussions would depend heavily on Meridian's ability to secure licensing rights to the revolutionary engine technology. Marcus approached these negotiations with the same methodical precision that had characterized his technical development work, but now he was operating from a position of unprecedented strength. Patent applications for his hybrid combustion system had been filed before his public demonstration, establishing his legal ownership of innovations that independent analysts were already valuing at more than $2 billion in potential market impact. The technical validation of Marcus's engine continued as automotive manufacturers conducted their own extensive testing of the Mustang that had become the automotive industry's most famous test vehicle. Every independent evaluation confirmed the extraordinary performance characteristics that had been demonstrated at the showcase. Fuel efficiency that exceeded existing benchmarks by more than 40%, and emission levels so low they redefined what was considered possible for internal combustion engines. Ford Motor Company expressed particular interest in the symbolic significance of Marcus's innovation being demonstrated in one of their classic vehicles. The partnership discussions that emerged from this connection would eventually lead to a licensing agreement that gave Ford exclusive rights to use Marcus's technology in their performance vehicle lineup, including a new generation of Mustang that would combine environmental responsibility with the power characteristics that had made the model an American icon. European manufacturers were equally eager to incorporate Marcus's technology into their product lines, recognizing that the hybrid combustion system could help them meet increasingly stringent environmental regulations without sacrificing the performance characteristics that consumers demanded. The licensing fees and royalty arrangements from these agreements would eventually generate hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue for Marcus, transforming him from invisible janitor to one of the automotive industry's most successful independent inventors. But the financial implications of Marcus's innovation extended far beyond personal wealth. The automotive industry was facing enormous pressure to develop cleaner technologies in response to climate change concerns and regulatory requirements that threatened to make traditional internal combustion engines economically obsolete. Marcus's breakthrough provided a path forward that preserved the familiar operation and manufacturing infrastructure of conventional engines while achieving environmental performance that exceeded even the most optimistic projections for hybrid and electric vehicles. The commercialization process moved with unprecedented speed as manufacturers recognized that the competitive advantages of Marcus's technology could be lost to rivals if implementation was delayed. Within 6 months of his initial demonstration, 3 major automotive companies had committed to production programs that would integrate his hybrid combustion system into new vehicle models scheduled for release within 2 years. Marcus established his own engineering consulting firm to manage the licensing agreements and provide technical support for manufacturers implementing his technology. The company, which he named Chun Advanced Automotive Systems, operated from a modern facility that contrasted sharply with the basement workshop where his innovations had first taken shape. But Marcus insisted on maintaining hands-on involvement in every aspect of the technology transfer process, ensuring that his revolutionary design principles were preserved through the transition from prototype to mass production. The success of Marcus's innovation also prompted broader changes in how the automotive industry approached research and development. Companies that had previously focused exclusively on internal engineering capabilities began establishing programs to identify and support independent inventors whose fresh perspectives might lead to breakthrough innovations. The recognition that revolutionary advances could emerge from unexpected sources challenged long-standing assumptions about where valuable ideas originated and how they should be evaluated. Educational institutions responded to the Marcus Chun phenomenon by developing new programs that encouraged hands-on engineering innovation outside traditional academic frameworks. Engineering schools began offering courses on independent invention, technical entrepreneurship, and the practical skills needed to transform theoretical concepts into working prototypes. Marcus himself became a frequent speaker at universities and technical conferences, sharing his experience as an example of how persistence and practical knowledge could overcome institutional barriers to innovation. The environmental impact of Marcus's technology became apparent as vehicles equipped with his hybrid combustion system entered regular production. Independent testing by environmental organizations confirmed that widespread adoption of his engine design could reduce automotive carbon emissions by more than 30%, while improving fuel economy to levels that would significantly decrease global petroleum consumption. These environmental benefits attracted attention from government agencies and international organizations working to address climate change through technological innovation. Marcus found himself testifying before congressional committees and participating in United Nations conferences on sustainable transportation. His journey from dismissed janitor to globally recognized environmental innovator, serving as a powerful symbol of how individual determination could contribute to solving humanity's greatest challenges. Jonathan Blackwood's position at Meridian became increasingly precarious as the board of directors questioned his leadership judgment and strategic vision. The company's failure to recognize and nurture the breakthrough innovation that had been developed literally within their own facility raised serious concerns about management competence and organizational culture. Within 8 months of Marcus's revelation, Jonathan announced his resignation from Meridian to pursue other opportunities, his departure marking the end of an era of corporate arrogance that had nearly cost the company its competitive future. Marcus was offered Jonathan's position as Chief Technology Officer at Meridian, a proposal that would have completed his transformation from invisible janitor to corporate executive. However, he declined the offer, preferring to maintain his independence as an inventor and consultant rather than becoming part of the corporate structure that had previously overlooked his potential. His decision reflected an understanding that his greatest value lay in his ability to think outside conventional frameworks rather than within them. The Mustang that had served as the platform for Marcus's demonstration found a permanent home in the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of American History, where it became part of an exhibit on automotive innovation and the democratization of technological advancement. The placard next to the vehicle described it as proof that revolutionary ideas could emerge from anywhere, and that true innovation often came from individuals willing to challenge accepted limitations rather than accept them. Marcus's personal transformation was perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the entire story. At 63, he had achieved financial security, professional recognition, and the satisfaction of knowing that his innovations would contribute to environmental protection and technological advancement for decades to come. But He continued to live modestly, working from his engineering consultancy and mentoring young inventors who sought to follow similar path from obscurity to recognition. The legacy of Marcus's breakthrough extended beyond automotive technology to influence how society valued different types of expertise and contribution. His story became a case study in business schools about the dangers of organizational blindness and the importance of recognizing talent regardless of its source. Human resources departments across numerous industries developed new programs to identify and nurture innovation potential among employees whose formal job descriptions might not reflect their full capabilities. Marcus established the Chun Foundation for Independent Innovation, a nonprofit organization that provided funding and technical support for inventors working outside traditional research institutions. The foundation's mission was to ensure that other potential innovators would have access to the resources and recognition that Marcus had been forced to develop through his own determination and sacrifice. The foundation's first major project was a collaboration with community colleges and vocational schools to establish innovation labs where students could develop practical engineering skills while pursuing breakthrough technologies. These facilities were equipped with modern prototyping tools and staffed by experienced engineers who could provide guidance and mentorship to aspiring inventors from all backgrounds. 5 years after his initial demonstration, Marcus's hybrid combustion system had been implemented in more than 2 million vehicles worldwide, with production numbers increasing rapidly as additional manufacturers completed their licensing agreements and integration programs. Independent studies calculated that these vehicles had already prevented the emission of more than 50 million tons of carbon dioxide, while saving consumers billions of dollars in fuel costs. The technology continued to evolve through ongoing development programs that Marcus supervised personally, with improvements and refinements that pushed efficiency levels even higher while reducing manufacturing costs. Second-generation versions of his engine achieved fuel efficiency improvements of more than 50% compared to conventional designs while maintaining the reliability and performance characteristics that consumers demanded. Marcus's story had become more than just a tale of individual success. It had become a symbol of the untapped potential that existed throughout society among people whose contributions were overlooked or undervalued. His transformation from dismissed janitor to globally recognized innovator proved that revolutionary advances could emerge from the most unexpected sources when intelligence, determination, and opportunity aligned. The worthless car that had triggered Jonathan Blackwood's casual insult had become the catalyst for an innovation worth billions of dollars, and a transformation that extended far beyond personal vindication to encompass environmental protection, technological advancement, and social recognition of previously invisible talent. Marcus Chun had not only ignited a revolutionary engine, he had ignited a new understanding of where innovation could originate and who deserved to be heard when they claimed to have found a better way forward. The quiet janitor who had spent years being overlooked had finally stepped into the recognition he deserved, proving that sometimes the most powerful revolutions begin not with those who command attention, but with those who earn it through persistence, brilliance, and the courage to believe that their ideas matter regardless of what others might think about the source from which they emerge.